We are live.
Yay! Yay! And it's Friday. We made both videos this live stream this week. Uh,
Yay.
it is call for celebration. Um, I am old new dude. He is.
Richard York, Asher's trueborn son.
We won't dilly dally. This is a very large chapter.
Yeah,
There's a lot going on. We were discussing it for a
let's
couple
see
of minutes
here.
before we started.
I tried to keep them fairly brief, but I put too many notes in here, so we're gonna be a while. Okay, let's do it.
Not a problem.
Tyrion ate the purple wedding. The new crown that his father had given the faith stood twice as tall as the one the mob had smashed. Glory of crystal and spun gold. Rainbow light flashed and shimmered every time the high septon moved his head. Tyrion had to wonder how the man could bear the weight. And even he had to concede that Joffrey and Marjorie made a regal couple as they stood side by side between the towering gilded statues of the father and the mother. The bride was lovely in ivory silk and Moorish lace, her skirts decorated with floral patterns picked out with seed pearls. As Renly's widow, she might have worn the Baratheon colors, gold and black, yet she came to them a Tyrell in a maiden's cloak made of 100 cloth of gold roses sewn with green velvet. He wondered if she really was a maiden. Not that Joffrey is like to know the difference. It could have been a Baratheon wedding, like the Targaryens, which reminds me of the evidence for Joffrey as a Targaryen. See triplet fingers of Clyde. The king looked near as splendid as his bride, his doublet of dusky rose, with a cloak of deep crimson velvet blazoned with his stag and lion. The crown rested easily on his curls, gold on gold. I saved that bloody crown for him. Tyrion shifted his weight uncomfortably from one foot to the other. Could not stand still. Too much wine. He should have thought to relieve himself before they set out from the Red Keep. The sleepless night he'd spent with Shay was making itself felt too. But most of all, he wanted to strangle his bloody royal nephew. Strangle, you say? I am no stranger to Valyrian steel, he boasted. The Septons were always going on about how the Father above judges us all. If the Father would be so good as to topple over and crush Joff like a dunghill, I might even believe it. He ought to have seen it long ago. Jaime would never send another man to do his killing, and Cersei was too cunning to use a knife that could be traced back to her. But Joff, arrogant, vicious, stupid little wretch that he was. He remembered a cold morning when he climbed down the steep exterior steps from Winterfell's library to find Prince Joffrey jesting with the hound about killing wolves. Send a dog to kill a wolf, he said. No, he didn't. Even Joffrey was not so foolish as to command Sandor Clegane to slay a son of Eddard Stark, however. The hound would have gone to Cersei. Instead, the boy found his cat's paw among the unsavory lot of free riders, merchants, camp followers, who had attached themselves to the king's party as they made their way north. Some poxy lackwit willing to risk his life for a prince's favor and a little coin. Tyrion wondered his idea had been to wait until Robert left Winterfell before it opened his throat. Joff's, most like. No doubt he thought it was the height of cunning. The prince's own dagger had a jeweled pommel and inlaid goldwork on the blade, Tyrion seemed to recall. At least Joff had not been stupid enough to use that. Instead, he went poking around his father's weapons. Robert Baratheon was a man of careless generosity, who would have given his son any dagger he wanted. Tyrion guessed that the boy had just taken it. Robert had come to Winterfell with a long tail of knights and retainers, a huge wheelhouse, and a baggage train. No doubt some diligent servant had made certain that the king's weapons went with him, in case he should desire any of them. I think by any theory, that part's true. The blade Joff chose was nice and plain. No goldwork, no jewels in the hilt, no silver inlaid on the blade. King Robert never wore it. Had likely forgotten he owned it. Not if he's bragging about it and showing it to Jaime, but anyway. Yet the Valyrian steel was deadly sharp enough to slice through skin, flesh, and muscle in one quick stroke. I am no stranger to Valyrian steel. But he had been, hadn't he? Else he would never have been so foolish as to pick Littlefinger's knife. This is the opposite of what Joffrey is saying. You're claiming he didn't recognize it was Valyrian steel? The why of it still eluded him. Simple cruelty, perhaps. His nephew had that in abundance. It was all Tyrion could do not to rush up all the wine he drank, piss in his breeches, or both. He squirmed uncomfortably. He ought to have held his tongue at breakfast. The boy knows I know now. My big mouth would be the death of me, I swear it. He knows, but he didn't know it was Valyrian steel? How does this make any sense? Although, and I have to point out, I don't believe Tyrion's vow either when he says, my big mouth will be the death of me, I swear it. And what I mean by that is that's the triple vow, right? That Brienne says, I swear it, I swear it, I swear it, when she says she's going to use Renly's sword to kill Stannis, which of course she's not going to do.
Yeah.
And speaking of vows, the 7 vows were made, the 7 blessings invoked, the 7 promises exchanged. When the wedding song had been sung and the challenge had come answered, it was time for the exchange of cloaks. Tyrion shifted his weight from one stunted leg to the other, trying to see between his father and his uncle Kevin. Gods are just. Joff will make a hash of this. He made certain not to look at Sansa lest his bitterness show in his eyes. I don't know, damn you. Would have been so bloody hard to bend those stiff, stark knees of yours and keep a little dignity. She felt guilty, if that helps.
Yeah.
Ace Tyrell removed his daughter's maiden cloak tenderly, while Joffrey accepted the folded bride's cloak from his brother Tommen and shook it out with a flourish. Boy King was as tall at 13 as his bride was at 16. He would not require a fool's back to climb upon. He draped Marjorie in the crimson and gold and leaned close to fasten it at her throat. And that easily she passed from her father to protection to her husbands. Who will protect her from Joff? Tyrion glanced at the Knight of Flowers, standing with the other King's Guard. You best keep your sword well honed, Sir Loras. A nice nod at the Tyrells, but Loras only needs his hands for royalty slain. See Triplet Dragons episode 6. With this kiss, I pledge my love, Joffrey declared in ringing tones. Marjorie echoed the words. He pulled her close and kissed her long and deep. Rainbow lights danced once more about the High Septon's crown as he solemnly declared Joffrey of the houses Baratheon and Lannister and Marjorie of House Tyrell to be one flesh, one heart, one soul. Good, that's done with. Now let's get back to the bloody castle so I can have a piss. Sir Loras and Sir Meryn led the procession except in their white scale armor and snowy cloaks. Then came Prince Tommen, scattering rose petals from a basket for King and Queen. After the royal couple followed Queen Cersei and Lord Tyrell, then the bride's mother, arm in arm, Lord Tywin. Queen of Thorns tottered after them with one hand on Sir Kevin Lannister's arm and the other on her cane, her twin guardsmen close behind her in case she fell. Next came Sir Garland Tyrell and his lady wife. Finally, it was their turn. My lady, Tyrion offered Sansa his arm. She took it dutifully, but he could feel her stiffness as they walked up the aisle together. She never once looked down at him. He heard them cheering outside even before he reached the doors. The mob loved Marjorie so much they were even willing to love Joffrey again. She had belonged to Renly, the handsome young prince who had loved them so well he had come back from beyond the grave to save them. And the bounty of Highgarden had come with her, flowing up the Rose Road from the south. The fools didn't seem to remember that it had been Mace Tyrell who closed the Rose Road to begin with and made the bloody family. They stepped out into the crisp autumn air. I feared we'd never escape, Tyrion quipped. Sansa had no choice but I like that line anyway. To look at him then. Yes, my lord, as you say. She looked sad. It was such a beautiful ceremony, though. As ours was not. It was long, I'll say that much. I need to return to the castle for a good piss. Tyrion rubbed the stump of his nose. Would that I contrived some mission to take me out of the city. Littlefinger was the clever one. True, arguably a nod at Littlefinger, though that may not confirm the target. Perhaps it waving from the wall, and Pearl Nettles says, whoop whoop. Caught one of these. Hey, good to have you, Pearl Nettles. I was just talking to you. With old new dude.
The unseen Allison?
I was just, the unseen Alice. Yeah, Alice Rivers. Joffrey and Marjorie stood surrounded by Kingsguard atop the steps that fronted on the broad marble plaza. Sir Adam and his gold cloaks held back the crowd, while the statue of King Baelor the Blessed gazed down on them benevolently. Tyrion had no choice but to queue up with the rest to offer congratulations. He kissed Marjorie's fingers and wished her every happiness. Thankfully, there were others behind him waiting their turns, so they did not need to linger long. The litter had been sitting in the sun, and it was very warm inside the curtains. As they lurched into motion, Tyrion reclined on an elbow while Sansa sat staring at her hands. She is just as comely as the Tyrell girl. Her hair was a rich autumn auburn, her eyes a deep, tully blue. Grief had given her a haunted, vulnerable look. If anything, it had only made her more beautiful. He wanted to reach her, to break through the armor of her courtesy. Is that what made him speak? Or just the need to distract himself from the fullness of his bladder? Or maybe Grantham Leaping? I've been thinking that when the roads are safe again, we might journey to Casterly Rock, far from Joffrey and my sister. The more he thought about what Joff had done to the 2 lives of 4 kings, the more in trouble. There was a message there, oh yes. It would please me to show you the Golden Gallery and the Lion's Mouth, and the Hall of Heroes where Jaime and I played as boys. You can hear thunder from below where the sea comes in. She raised her head slowly. He knew what she was seeing: the swollen, brutish brow, the raw stump of his nose, his crooked pink scar and mismatched eyes. Her own eyes were big and blue. I should go wherever my lord husband wishes. Hoped it might please you, my lady. It will please me and please my lord. His mouth tightened. What a pathetic little man you are. Did you think babbling about the lion's mouth would make her smile? When have you ever made a woman smile but with gold? No, it was a foolish notion. Only a Lannister can love the rock. Yes, my lord, as you wish. Richard's petting the dog. Yes, I am. He wants love, and George drops the Princess Bride line. Perhaps they will be together in the end. Ned wound up with Kat after all.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to be echoes of that. Tyrion could hear the commons shouting out King Joffrey's name. 3 years, that cruel boy will be a man ruling in his own right. And every dwarf, half his wits, will be a long way from King's Landing. Every dwarf? That's some foreshadowing. Old Town, perhaps, or even the Free Cities. He'd always had a yen to see the Titan of Bravos. Perhaps that would please Sansa. Gently, he spoke of Bravos and had a wall of sullen courtesy as icy and unyielding as the wall he had walked once in the north. He made him weary, then and now. They paced the rest of the journey in silence. After a while, Tyrion found himself hoping that Sansa would say something, anything, the merest word, but she never spoke. When the litter halted in the castle yard, he let one of the grooms help her down. We will be expected at the feast an hour hence, my lady. I will join you shortly. He walked off, stiff-legged. Across the yard, he could hear Marjorie's breathless laugh as Joffrey swept her from the saddle. Boy will be as tall and strong as Jaime one day, he thought. And I'll still be a dwarf beneath his feet. And one day he's like to make me even shorter. Characters are often wrong.
It's true.
Look at cards, hello.
Hey.
He found a privy and sighed gratefully as he relieved himself of the morning's wine. There were times when a piss felt near as good as a woman. This was one. He wished he could relieve.
A pegasm.
Sorry? Yeah, oh, yeah.
A pegasm.
Yeah. He wished he could relieve himself of his doubts and guilt half as easily. Podrick Payne was waiting outside his chambers. I laid out your new doublet. Not here. On your bed. In the bedchamber. Yes, that's where we keep the bed. Sansa would be in there dressing for the feast. Shay as well. Wine, Pod. Tyrion drank it in his window seat, brooding over chaos in the kitchen below. The sun had not yet touched the top of the castle wall, but he could smell breads baking and meats roasting. Guests would soon be pouring into the throne room, full of anticipation. This would be a solemn splendor, designed not only to unite Highgarden and Castle Rock, but to trumpet their power and wealth as a lesson to any who might still think to oppose Joffrey's rule. New, not good. But who would be mad enough to contest Joffrey's rule now, after what had befallen Stannis Baratheon and Robb Stark? That could be a Mad Queen Dany reference, although we could interpret it as the Tyrells or Littlefinger as well. There was still fighting in the Riverlands, but everywhere the coils were tightening. Sir Gregor Clegane had crossed the Trident and seized the Ruby Ford, then captured Harrenhal almost effortlessly. Seaguard had yielded to Black Walder Frey. Lord Randall Tarley held Maidenhold, Duskendale, and the King's Road. In the west, Sir Davin Lannister had linked up with Sir Forley Prester, the Golden Tooth from March-on River. Sir Ryman Frey was leading 2,000 spears down to the Twins to join them, and Paxter Redwyne claimed his fleet would soon set sail from the Arbor to begin the long voyage around Dorne and through the Stepstones. Stannis' Lyseni pirates would be outnumbered 10 to 1. The struggle that the Maesters were calling the War of the Five Kings was all but at an end. Mace Tyrell had been heard complain that Lord Tywin had left no victories for him. My lord, Pod was at his side. Will you be changing? I laid out the doublet on your bed. For the feast. Feast? Said Tyrion sourly. What feast? The wedding feast. Pod missed the sarcasm, of course. King Joffrey and Lady Marjorie. Queen Marjorie, I mean. Tyrion resolved to get very, very drunk tonight. Very well, young Podrick. Let us go make me festive. Shay was helping Sansa with her hair when they entered the bedchamber. I think Shay might be in on the poisoning, and it's certainly Tywin's.
Yeah.
Joy and grief, he thought when he beheld them there together. Laughter and tears. Sansa wore a gown of silvery satin trimmed and bare, with dagged sleeves that almost touched the floor. lined in soft purple felt. Shay had arranged her hair artfully in a delicate silver net, winking with dark purple gemstones. Tyrion had never seen her look more lovely, because she wore sorrow on those long satin sleeves. Lady Sansa, he told her, you shall be the most beautiful woman in the hall tonight. My lord is too kind. My lady, said Shay wistfully, would I come serve at table? I so want to see the pigeons fly out of the pie. Shay tries talking to both of them and is interested in witnessing the events nearest the poisoning.
Yeah.
Sansa looks at her uncertainly. Queen has chosen all the servants, and the hall will be too crowded. Tyrion had to bite back his annoyance. There will be musicians strolling all through the castle, though. Tables in the outer ward, food and drink for all. Inspected his new doublet, crimson velvet with padded shoulders and puffed sleeves, slashed to show the black satin underline. A handsome garment. All it wants is a handsome man to wear it. Come, Pod, help me into this. So anyway, I always do think it's very interesting how Shay seems very determined. She doesn't care about having a feast. She's very determined to see the events right near the poison.
Well, if she is a
Tyrell?
Littlefinger plant from the very beginning, like I said, like I told you before we started the video, I think that there is multiple things going on with possibly multiple targets and multiple people that are there to get some poisoning done. And I think she was meant to be one of them, but can't find a road in.
Yep. He had another cup of wine as he dressed, then took his wife by the arm and escorted her from the kitchen keep to join the river of silk, satin, and velvet flowing toward the throne room. Some guests had gone inside to find their places on the benches. Others were milling in front of the doors, enjoying the unseasonable warmth of the afternoon. Tyrion led Sansa around the yard to perform the necessary courtesies. She's good at this, he thought, as he watched her tell Giles that his cough was sounding better. Compliment Eleanor Tyrell in her gown. Eleanor might be named for Eleanor Talbot. See Triplet Dragons Episode 1. He questioned Jalabar Joe about wedding customs in the Summer Isles. His cousin Sir Lancel had been brought down by Sir Kevin the first time he'd left his sickbed since the battle. He looks ghastly. Lancel's hair had turned white and brittle, and he was thin as a stick, and of course that's supposed to be beyond foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Not his father beside him holding him up, he would surely have collapsed. Yet when Sansa praised his valor and said how good it was to see him getting strong again, both Lancel and Sir Kevin beamed. She would have made Joffrey a good queen and a better wife if he'd had the sense to love her. He wondered if his nephew was capable of loving anyone. We know he craved love from Robert, if that counts.
Yeah.
You do look quite exquisite, child, Lady Elena Tyrell told Sansa when she tottered up in a cloth gold gown that must have weighed more than she did. This miniature hair, though. The little old woman reached up and fussed at the loose strands, tucking them back into place and straightening Sansa's hairnet. I was very sorry to hear about your losses, she said as she tugged the fiddle. Tugged is an interesting word choice. Your brother was a terrible traitor, I know. If we start killing men at weddings, they'll be even more frightened of marriage than they are presently. There, that's better. George dropping the clue with the tug. Yeah. And by that I mean, bringing up the idea of killing men at weddings. And oh, it'll be so terrible coming straight from Elena.
Yeah, right after the tug line, yeah.
Yeah. Lady Elena smiled. I am pleased to say I shall be leaving for Highgarden the day after next. I've had quite enough of this smelly city, thank you. Perhaps you would like to accompany me for a little visit whilst the men are off having their war. I shall miss my Marjorie so dreadfully, all her lovely ladies. Your company would be such sweet solace. You're too kind, my lady, said Sansa, but my place is with my lord husband. Lady Elena gave Tyrion a wrinkled, toothless smile. Oh?
Hey, before you get too farther, and real quickly, accompanying her to Highgarden after the wedding would be possible motive for Tyrion no longer being there and them whisking Sansa to their cause.
Sure. Where did we meet Shay again? The Riverlands? How can she be a Littlefinger plant? Well, actually, tug is a very aggressive way to fix someone's hair. Yeah, exactly. Actually, she refuses to say where she came from and who she was with twice when Tyrion asks her, and Bronn is the one that brings her, and Bronn refuses to answer that question too and distracts Tyrion when he keeps asking about it. And and in fact, they use words that strongly imply Tywin. So, in fact, they're kind of tie it together to Tywin. Their girl metals.
Yeah. Well,
They
Littlefinger also has five sex houses, and to use a sex worker as a spy versus Varys's little children, a sex worker would tend to lean toward Littlefinger as the employer.
It appears that from the textual clues that Tywin has used Bronn to place Shay with Tyrion, and so then the question was, well, if she's a spy with Tywin, well, is she really just serving Tywin, or is she also serving someone else? But how would Peter know Tyrion will be there? Tywin makes sense. Well, he could have placed her as a spy with Tywin, who then placed her as a spy with Tyrion, and that's all that's speculative as far as that goes. But there's definitely textual clues that Tywin has placed her as a spy with Tyrion, which makes the whole ordering him not to bring her to King's Landing really hilarious. Anyway, oh, okay, I see. Yep. Lady Olenna gave Tyrion a wrinkled, toothless smile. Oh, forgive a silly old woman, my lord. I did not mean to steal your lovely wife. Did you, though? I assumed you would be off leading a Lannister host against some wicked foe. Host of dragons and stags. The master of coin must remain at court to see that all the armies are paid for. To be sure. Dragons and stags, that's very clever. And Dorse pennies as well. I've heard of these Dorse pennies. No doubt collecting those is such a dreadful chore. I leave the question to others, my lady. Oh, do you? I would have thought you might want to tend to it yourself. We can't have the crown being cheated of its Dorse pennies now, can we? It sure sounds like
that's a dig for Shay.
It sure sounds like she's saying she assumed he would be with his sex worker. How could she possibly know that? Have I mentioned I think she and Tywin are in the know on this plan? Olenna stealing wives? Very wildling of her. Oh, yeah, I like that. Gods forbid. Tyrion was beginning to wonder whether Lord Luther Tyrell had ridden off that cliff intentionally. If you'll excuse us, Lady Olenna, it is time we were in our places. Our friend Charles Tyrell thought the heir of House Tyrell does not think it was intentional, but that Lord Luther was skin changing a bird at the time.
Yep, I agree.
Myself as well. 77 courses, I dare say. Don't you find that a bit excessive, my lord? I shan't eat more than 3 or 4 bites myself, but you and I are very little, aren't we? She patted Sansa's hair again and said, well, off with you, child, and try to be merrier. Now, where have my guardsmen gone? Left, right, where are you? Come help me to the dais. Mr. Crow's laughing. Although evenfall was still an hour away, the throne room was already a blaze of light and torches burning in every sconce. The guests stood along the tables as heralds called out the names and titles of lords and ladies making their entrance. Pages in their royal liveries escorted them down the broad central aisle. The gallery above was packed with musicians, drummers and pipers and fiddlers, strings and horns and skins. How are we doing on time? We're not too much. We're past a third of we're not too much past a third of an hour, so that's not too bad. Tyrion clutched Sansa's arm and made the walk with a heavy, waddling stride. He could feel their eyes on him, picking at the fresh new scar that had left him even uglier than he had been before. Let them look, he thought, as he hopped up to his seat. Let them stare and whisper until they've had their fill. I will not hide myself for their sake. The Queen of Thorns followed them in, shuffling along with tiny little steps. Tyrion wondered which of them looked more absurd, him with Sansa or the wizened little woman between her 7-foot-tall twin guardsmen. Hey, Chris the Crow. If you say Chris the Crow rapidly, it sounds like Kristen Cole. You take that back. Don't you be insulting Chris that way. Joffrey and Marjorie rode into the throne room on matched white chargers. Pages ran before them, scattering rose petals under their hooves. The king and queen had changed for the feast as well. Joffrey wore striped black and crimson breeches and a cloth of gold doublet with black satin sleeves and onyx studs. Black and red? How Targaryen! See Trivia Targaryens, episode 5. Marjorie had exchanged the demure gown that she had worn in Sept, one much more revealing. confection in pale green samite with its tight-laced bodice that bared her shoulders and the tops of her small breasts. Unbound, her soft brown hair tumbled over her white shoulders, down her back, almost to her waist. Around her brows was a slim golden crown. Her smile was shy and sweet. A lovely girl, thought Tyrion, and the kinder fate that my nephew deserves. What fate does he deserve? And given that I consider the lovely girl to be the poisoner, think about that. A lovely girl, thought Tyrion, and a kinder fate than my nephew deserves. Anyway, what fate does he deserve?
Joking.
The Kingsguard escorted them onto the dais, to the seats of honor beneath the shadow of the Iron Throne, draped for the occasion in long silk streamers of Baratheon gold, Lannister crimson, and Tyrell green. Cersei embraced Marjorie and kissed her cheeks. Lord Tywin did the same, and then Lancel and Sir Kevin. Joffrey received loving kisses from the bride's father and his two new brothers, Loras and Garland. No one seemed in any great rush to kiss Tyrion. When the king and queen had taken their seats, the High Septon rose to lead a prayer. At least it is not drawn as badly as the last one, Tyrion consoled himself. He and Sansa had been seated far to the king's right, beside Sir Garland Tyrell and his wife, Lady Lyanette. A dozen others sat closer to Joffrey. A dozen others, which is kind of some LML would call that last hero math right there, which a pretty man might have taken for a slight, given that he had been the king's hand only a short time past. Tyrion would have been glad if there had been 100. Let the cups be filled, Joffrey proclaimed when the gods had been given their due. His cupbearer poured a whole flagon of dark arbor red into the golden wedding chalice that Lord Tyrell had given him that morning. The king had used both hands to lift it. To my wife, the queen! Marjorie! The hall shouted back at him. Marjorie! Marjorie! To the queen! 1,000 cups rang together, and the wedding feast was well and truly begun. Tyrion Lannister drank with the rest, emptying his cup on that toast, signaling for it to be refilled as soon as he was seated again. The first dish was a creamy soup of mushrooms and buttered snails served in gilded bowls. Tyrion had scarcely touched the breakfast, and the wine had already gone to his head, so the food was welcome. He finished quickly. 1 done, 76 to come. 77 dishes, while there are still starving children in the city, and men would kill for a radish. They might not love the Tyrells half so well if they could see us now. Sansa tasted a spoonful of soup and pushed the bowl away. Not to your liking, my lady? Tyrion asked. There's to be so much, my lord. I have a little tummy. She filled nervously with her hair and looked down the table to where Joffrey sat with his Tyrell queen. Does she wish it were her in Marjorie's place? Tyrion frowned. Even a child should have better sense. He turned away, wanting distraction, but everywhere he looked were women. Fair, fine, beautiful, happy women who belonged to other men. Marjorie, of course, smiling sweetly as she and Joffrey shared a drink from the great seven-sided wedding chalice. Her mother, Lady Allery, silver-haired and handsome, so proud beside Mace Tyrell. The queen's 3 young cousins, bright as birds. Lord Meriwether's dark-haired, Moorish wife with her big black sultry eyes. Ilaria Sand among the Dornishmen. Cersei had placed them at their own table just below the dais in a place of high honor, but as far from the Tyrells as the Whitwell Hall would allow. Laughing at something the Red Viper had told her. If you say Chris the Crow 5 times fast, it sounds like Quisquaqua, right? Whatever. And there was one woman sitting almost at the foot of the third table on the left, the wife of one of the Fossaways, he thought, and heavy with his child. Her delicate beauty was in no way diminished by her belly, nor was her pleasure in the food and frolics. Tyrion watched as her husband put her morsels off his plate. They drank from the same cup, would kiss often, unpredictably. Whenever they did, his hand would gently rest upon her stomach. Tender, protective gesture. It was his girl levels. He wondered what Sansa would do if he leaned over and kissed her right now. Flinch away, most likely, or be brave and suffer through it as was her duty. She is nothing if not dutiful, this wife of mine. He told her they wished to have her maidenhead tonight. She would suffer that dutifully as well. No more than she had to. He called for more wine. By the time he got it, the second course was being served. Pastry coffin filled with pork, pine nuts, and eggs. Sansa ate no more than a bite of hers as the heralds were summoned the first 7 singers. How many of you just tried it 5 times? Grey-bearded Hamish the Harper announced that he would perform the Ears of Gods and Men, a song never heard before in all the 7 kingdoms. He called it Lord Renly's Ride. His fingers moved across the strings of the high harp, filling the throne room with sweet sound. From his throne of bones, the Lord of Death looked down on the murdered Lord, Hamish began, and went on to tell how Renly, repenting his attempt to usurp his crown, had defied the Lord of Death himself and crossed back to the land of the living to defend the realm against his brother. And for this, poor Simon wound up in a bowl of brown, Tyrion mused. Queen Marjorie was teary-eyed by the end when the shade of brave Lord Renly flew to Highgarden to steal one last look at his true love's face. Renly Baratheon never repented of anything in his life, the imp told Sansa. If I'm any judge, Hamish just won himself a gilded lute. Harper also gave them several more familiar songs, the roads of gold to the Tyrells, no doubt, as the reins of Castamere went to flatter his father. Maiden, mother, and crone delighted the High Septon. My lady wife pleased all the little girls with romance in their hearts, no doubt some little boys as well. Tyrion listened with half an ear as he sampled sweet corn fritters and hot oat bread baked with bits of date, apple, and orange, gnawed on the rib of wild boar. I know, today the chat is very active. Thereafter, dishes and diversions succeeded one another in a staggering profusion, buoyed along with a flood of wine and ale. Hamish left them, his place taken by a smallish elderly bear who danced clumsily, pipe and drum, while the wedding guests ate trout cooked in a crust of crushed almonds. Moonboy mounted his stilts and strode around the tables in pursuit of Lord Tyrell's ludicrously fat full butter rumps, and the lords and ladies sampled roast herrings and cheese and onion pies. A troop of Patashi tumblers performed cartwheels and handstands, balanced platters on their bare feet, and stood upon each other's shoulders to form a pyramid. The feats were accompanied by crabs boiled in fiery eastern spices, trenchers filled with chunks of chopped mutton stewed in almond milk with carrots, raisins, and onions, and fish tarts, fresh from the ovens, served so hot they burned the fingers. Then the herald summoned another singer, Colio Quininus of Tyrosh, who had a vermilion beard and an accent as ludicrous as Simon had promised. Colio began with his version of the Dance of the Dragons, which was more properly a song for two singers, male and female. Tyrion suffered through it with a double helping of honey ginger partridge and several cups of wine. A haunting ballad of two dying lovers amidst the doom of Valyria might have pleased the hall more if Colio had not sung it in High Valyrian, which most of the guests could not speak. But Bessa the barmaid won them back with its ribald lyrics. Peacocks were served in their plumage, roasted whole and stuffed with dates, while Colio summoned a drummer, bowed low before Lord Tywin, and launched into the raids of Castamere. If I have to hear 7 versions of that, I may go down to Flea Bottom and apologize to the stew. Tyrion turned to his. So which did you prefer? Sansa blinked at him. My lord? The singers. Which did you prefer? I'm sorry, my lord. I was not listening. She was not eating either. Sansa is autumn myths. He spoke without thinking and instantly felt a fool. All her kin are slaughtered and she's wed to me, and I wonder what's amiss. No, my lord. She looked away from him and feigned an unconvincing interest in Moonboy pelting Sir Dantos with dates. That's sort of her problem. Something is supposed to be amiss.
Yeah.
4 master pyromancers conjured up beasts of living flame to tear at each other with fiery claws, whilst the serving men ladled out bowls of Blandisauri, a mixture of beef broth and boiled wine sweetened with honey and dotted with blanched almonds and chunks of capon. Then came some strolling pipers and clever dogs and sword swallowers, with buttered peas, chopped nuts, and slivers of swan poached in a sauce of saffron and peaches.
Can you imagine how much food is being wasted? I know we're pressed for time, but it's staggering.
Yep. Not swan again, Tyrion muttered, remembering his son and sister on the eve of battle. Dennis the Menace once complained, steak again? Can't we afford hot dogs once in a while? Juggler kept a half-dozen swords and axes whirling through the air as skewers of blood sausage were brought sizzling to the tables, juxtaposition that Tyrion thought passing clever, though not perhaps in the best of taste. Blood sausages equal Benjen confirmed. If you haven't heard the theory that Benjen was eaten by Craster, Night's Watch. Yeah. Anyway, the heralds blew their trumpets. To sing for the golden lute, one cried. We give you Galleon of Coy. Galleon was a big barrel-chested man with a black beard, a bald head, and a thunderous voice that filled every corner of the throne room. He brought no fewer than 6 musicians to play for him. Noble lords and ladies fair, I sing but one song for you this night, he announced. It is the song of the Blackwater, and how a realm was saved. The drummer began a slow, ominous beat. Darkboard brooded high in his tower, Galleon began, in a castle as black as the night. Black was his hair, and black was his soul, the musicians chanted in unison. Amen. He feasted on bloodlust and envy, and filled his cup full up with spite, sang Galleon. My brother once ruled 7 kingdoms, he said to his harridan wife. I'll take what was his and make it all mine. Let his son feel the point of my knife. A brave young boy with hair of gold, his players chanted as a wood harp and a fiddle began to play. If I am ever hand again, the first thing. Oh, this is Tyrion, sorry. If I'm ever hand again, the first thing I'll do is hang all the singers, said Tyrion too loudly. Lady Leonette laughed lightly beside him. Sir Garland leaned over to say, a valiant deed unsung is no less valiant. Renly's ghost is resigned to being remembered as Renly. The Dark Lord assembled his legions. They gathered around him like crows, and thirsty for blood, they boarded their ships and cut off poor Tyrion's nose. Tyrion finished. Lady Leonette giggled. Perhaps you could be a singer, my lord. You rhyme as well as this galleon. No, my lady, Sir Garland said. My lord of Lannister was made to do great deeds, not to sing of them. But for his chain and his wildfire, the foe would have been across the river. And if Tyrion's wildlings had not slain most of Lord Stannis' scouts, we would never have been able to take him unawares. Words made Tyrion feel absurdly grateful, helped to mollify it as Galleon sang endless verses about the valor of the Boy King and his mother, the Golden Queen. She never did that, Sansa blurted out suddenly. I never believe anything you hear in a song, my lady, Tyrion summoned the circuit man to fill their wine cups. Soon it was full night outside the tall windows, and still Galleon sang on. The song had 77 verses, though it seemed more like 1,000. One for every guest in the hall. Tyrion drank his way through the last 20 or so to help resist the urge to stuff mushrooms in his ears. By the time the singer had taken his bows, some of the guests were drunk enough to begin providing unintentional entertainments of their own. Grand Maester Pycelle fell asleep while dancers from the summer isle swirled and spun in ropes made of bright feathers and smoky silk. Waddles of elk stuffed with ripe blue cheese were being brought out when one of Lord Rowan's knights stabbed a Dornishman. Goldcloaks dragged them both away, one to a cell to rot, the other to get sewn up by Maester Balabar. Tyrion was toying with a leche of brawn, spiced with cinnamon, cloves, sugar, and almond milk, when King Joffrey lurched suddenly to his feet. Bring on my royal jousters, he shouted in a voice thick with wine, clapping his hands together. My nephew is drunker than I am, Tyrion thought as the Goldcloaks opened the great doors at the end of the hall. From where he sat, he could only see the tops of 2 striped lances as a pair of riders side by side. A wave of laughter followed them down the center aisle toward the king. They must be riding ponies, he concluded, until they came into full view. The jousters were a pair of dwarfs. One was mounted on an ugly gray dog, long of leg and heavy of jaw. The other rode an immense spotted saddle. Painted wooden armor, okay, so it is wooden, okay, clattered and clacked as the little knights bounced up and down in their saddles. Their shields were bigger than they were. They wrestled manfully with their lances as they clomped along, swaying this way and that, and eliciting gusts of mirth. One knight was all in gold with a black stag painted on his shield. The other wore gray and white, and bore a wolf device. Their mounts were barded likewise. Tyrion glanced along the dais at all the laughing faces. Joffrey was red and breathless. Tommen was hooting and hopping up and down in his seat. Cersei was chuckling politely, and even Lord Tywin was mildly amused. Of all those at the high table, only Sansa Stark was not smiling. Could have loved her for that, but in truth be told, the Stark's girl's eyes were far away, as if she had not even seen the ludicrous riders loping toward her. The dwarfs are not to blame, Tyrion decided. When they are done, I shall compliment them and give them a fat purse of silver. Come tomorrow, I will find whoever planned this little diversion, and arrange for a different sort of thanks. Or maybe his wife will have to take care of that.
Maybe.
When the dwarfs reined up beneath the dais to salute the king, the wolf knight dropped his shield. As he leaned over to grab for it, the stag knight lost control of his heavy lance and slammed across the back. The wolf knight fell off his pig, and his lance tumbled over and pointed his foe in the head. The Stark girl's eyes were far away. So Oppo is the Stark and Penny is the Baratheon. And according to the Oxford English Dictionary, Oppo is 19th century slang for partner, is an opposite number. They both wound up on the floor in a great tangle. When they rose, both tried to mount the dog. Much shouting and shoving followed. Finally, they regained their saddles, only mounted on each other's steed, holding the wrong shield and facing backward. Oppo and Penny at least briefly swapped mounts here, but Penny says Oppo always rode the pig. It took some time to sort that out, but in the end, they spurred to opposite ends of the hall and wheeled about for the tilt. As the lords and ladies guffawed and giggled, the little men came together with a crash and a clatter, and the wolf knight's lance struck the helm of the stag knight and knocked his head clean off. It spun through the air, spattering blood to land in the lap of Lord Giles. The headless dwarf careened around the tables, flailing his arms, not really his, but anyway. Dogs barked, women shrieked. Moon Boy made a great show, swaying perilously back and forth on his stilts, until Lord Giles pulled a dripping red melon out of the shattered helm, at which point the Stag Knight poked his face up out of his armor, and another storm of laughter rocked the hall. The knights waited for it to die, circled around each other, trading colorful insults, were about to separate for another joust, when the dog threw its rider to the floor and mounted the saddle. The huge pig squealed in distress, while the wedding guests squealed with laughter, especially when the Stag Knight leapt onto the Wolf Knight, let down his wooden breeches, and started to pump away frantically at the other's nether portions. So Penny is the one pumping her brother Oppo here. I yield, the dwarf on the bottom screamed. Good sir, put up your sword. I would, if you'll stop moving the sheath, the dwarf on the top replied in the merriment of all. And part of this could be to illustrate that, part of this being Penny could be to illustrate that that when a woman is speaking in a helm, it can sound more booming or masculine.
Yeah.
This is like when we regress into ourselves to escape somewhere we don't want to be. Yep. Which, of course, Jamie talks to Tommen about. Joffrey was snorting wine from both nostrils. Gasping, he lurched to his feet, knocking over his tall two-handed chalice. A champion, he shouted. We have a champion. Hall began to quiet when it seemed that the king was speaking. The dwarfs untangled, no doubt anticipating royal thanks. Not a true champion, though, said Joff. A true champion defeats all challengers. The king climbed up on the table. Who else will challenge our tiny champion? With a gleeful smile, he turned toward Tyrion. Uncle, you'll defend the honor of my realm, won't you? You can ride the pig. Oppo always rode the pig, and so will Tyrion. Laughter crashed over him like a wave. Tyrion Lannister did not remember rising, nor climbing on his chair, but he found himself standing on the table. Sure sounds like some Brandon Leafy here. The hall was a split blur of glaring faces. He twisted his face in the most hideous mockery of a smile the Seven Kings had ever seen. Your Grace, he called. I'll ride the pig, but only if you ride the dog. Joff scowled, confused. Me? I'm no dwarf. Why me? Step right into the cut, Joff. Why, you're the only man in the hall that I'm certain of defeating. He could not have said which was sweeter, the instant of shocked silence, the yell of laughter that followed, or the look of blind rage on his nephew's face. The dwarf hopped back to the floor, well satisfied, and by the time he looked back, Sir Osmond and Sir Meryn were helping Joff climb down as well. When he noticed Cersei glaring at him, Tyrion blew her a kiss. It was a relief when the musicians began to play. The tiny jousters led dog and sow from the hall. The guests returned to their trenchers of brawn. Tyrion called for another cup of wine, and suddenly he felt Sir Garland's hand in his sleeve. My lord, beware, the knight warned the king. We're more than two-thirds of the way through, and we're at 43 minutes, 3 hours, so we're doing right, I guess. Tyrion turned in his seat. Joffrey was almost upon him, red-faced and staggering, wine slopping on the brim of the great golden wedding chalice he carried in both hands. Your Grace, was all he had time to say before the king upended the chalice over his head. Wine washed down over his face in a red torrent. It drenched his hair, stung his eyes, burned in his wound, ran down his cheeks, and soaked the velvet of his new doublet. How do you like that, imp? Joffrey mocked. And I emphasize the red because there's 4 times we hear the color of the wine. This one's the red. We're going to hear purple, then dark red, then purple from now on. Tyrion's eyes were
at the very beginning. It's called a dark red. Vintage or arbor or something.
Yep. Tyrion's eyes were on fire. He dabbed his face with the back of his sleeve and tried to bring the world back to clarity. That was ill done, Your Grace, he heard Sir Garland say quietly. So again, Sir Garland risked his neck defending Tyrion as he did with the book. Not at all, Sir Garland. Tyrion dare not let this grow any uglier than it was, not here with half the realm looking on. Not every king would think to honor a humble subject, serving him for his own royal choice. The wine spilled. Didn't spill, said Joffrey, too graceless to take the retreat Tyrion offered. And I wasn't serving you either. Queen Marjorie appeared suddenly at Joffrey's elbow. My sweet king, Aragorn entreated. Come, return to your place. There's another singer waiting. So Queen Marjorie Tyrion could hint that she is stealthy here.
Well, also, if the plan is to get rid of Tyrion, her speeding to Joffrey's side to remove him from the area, possibly ruining the attempted
Sure.
murder on Tyrion.
Sure. Alaric of Aeson, said Lady Elena Tyrell, leaning on her cane and taking no more notice of the wine-soaked dwarf that her granddaughter had done. I do so hope he plays us the reigns of Castamere. It's been an hour. I've forgotten how it goes. And we did have at least one singer not sing it because he only sang one song with 77 verses. But anyway. Sir Adam has a toast he wants to make as well, said Margaret. Your Grace, please. I have no wine, Joffrey declared. How can I drink a toast if I have no wine? Uncle Lip, you can serve me. Since you won't joust, you'll be my cupbearer. I would be most honored. It's not meant to be an honor, Joffrey screamed. Bend down and pick up my chalice. Tyrion did as he was bid, but as he reached for the handle, Joff kicked the chalice through his legs. Pick it up. Are you as clumsy as you are ugly? He had to crawl under the table to find the thing. Good. Now fill it with wine. He claimed a flagon from a serving girl and filled the goblet 3/4 full. No. On your knees, dwarf. Kneeling, Tyrion raised up the heavy cup, warning he was about to get a second bath. Joffrey took the wine chalice one-handed, drank deep, and set it on the table. You can get up now, uncle. So the wine is not yet poisoned, nor have we seen it purple yet. His legs cramped as he tried to rise, and almost spilled him again. Tyrion had to grab hold of a chair to steady himself. Sir Garland lent him a hand. Joffrey laughed, and Cersei as well, then others. He could not see who, but he heard them. So this is definitely one moment where we could have the poisoning. Elena is here, although I like Marjorie for the deed, as we've discussed previously. And Garland is
when not to drink.
And Garland is busy helping Tyrion. Yeah, so she, at a minimum, there has to be some sort of signal or communication, and this whole thing was not the way things were supposed to go. So for this to be the poisoning would be kind of weirdly risky if it's not Marjorie, because now you've got events taking place that are different than you planned, and you poison the wine right here. If it's not Marjorie, you have to somehow communicate. Now's the time when you have to stop drinking from the cup. That just seems really risky to me. Whereas Marjorie getting caught with an amethyst that Elena pulled from Sansa's hairnet does not seem nearly as risky to me. But anyway. Your Grace, Lord Tywin's voice was impeccably correct. They are bringing in the pie. Your sword is needed. The pie? Joffrey took his queen by the hand. Come, my lady, it's the pie. The guests stood, shouting and applauding and smashing their wine cups together. A great pie made its slow way into the hall, wheeled along by a half-dozen beaming cooks. 2 yards across, it was crusty and golden brown. They'd hear squeaks and thumpings coming from inside it. And of course, this is another opportunity because there's a distraction as everybody looks at the pie.
The pie could have been the code word too.
Yeah, it's possible, but that somebody's not supposed to poison it until now, and she's supposed to stop drinking and say, "I've had too much wine" or something from now on.
Yeah,
that's possible. Tyrion pulled himself back into his chair. All he needed now was for a dove to shit on him, and his day would be complete. The wine had soaked through his doublet and small clothes, and he could feel the wetness against his skin. He ought to change, but no one was permitted to leave the feast until the time came for the bedding ceremony. I was still a good 20 or 30 dishes off, he judged. King Joffrey and his queen met the pie below the dais. As Joff drew his sword, Marjorie laid a hand on his arm to restrain him. Widow's wail was not meant for slicing pies. True. Joffrey lifted his voice. Sir Ilyn, your sword! From the shadows at the back of the hall, Sir Ilyn Payne appeared. The spectre at the feast, thought Tyrion as he watched the king's justice stride forward, gaunt and grim. He'd been too young to have known Sir Ilyn before he lost his tongue. He would have been a different man in those days, but now the silence is as much a part of him as those hollow eyes, that rusty chainmail shirt, and the greatsword on his back. Sir Ilyn bowed before the king and queen, reached back over his shoulder, drew forth 6 feet of ornate silver bright with rubies. He knelt to offer the huge blade to Joffrey, hilt first. Points of red fire winked from ruby eyes in the pommel. A chunk of dragonglass carved in the shape of a green skull. Sansa stirred in her seat. What sword is that? Tyrion's eyes still stung from the wine. He blinked and looked again. Sir Ilyn's greatsword was as long and wide as ice. It was too silvery bright. The Valyrian steel had a darkness to it, a smokiness in its soul. Sansa clutched his arm. What has Sir Ilyn done with my father's sword? I should have sent ice back to Robb Stark, Tyrion thought. Then said his father, but Lord Tywin was watching the king. This is probably when a first-time reader is supposed to figure this out. Joffrey and Marjorie joined hands to lift the greatsword and swung it down together in a silvery arc. When the pie crust broke, the doves burst forth in a swirl of white feathers, scattering in every direction, flapping for the windows and the rafters. A roar of delight went up from the benches. The fiddlers and pipers in the gallery began to play a sprightly tune. Joff took his bride in his arms and whirled her around merrily. The serving placed a slice of hot pigeon pie in front of Tyrion, covered with a spoon of lemon cream. So obviously, this lemon cream was the second most popular theory of the.
Yeah, I like it.
And you've theorized that it's possible that both were poisoned. There may have been an attack.
Yeah. There could have been multiple people coming to possibly Littlefinger for we want this person dead. We need your help in doing it. That type of thing. And Joffrey and Tyrion could have both been an intentional poisoned person at this wedding. But we don't ever get to see Tyrion poisoned because he doesn't eat the pie.
It's possible. Mother Royan says
George hiding the attempted assassination attempt of one individual by the assassination of another.
Yeah, and of course, there's multiple theories as to whether Joffrey did the poisoning, or Cersei did the poisoning, or Tywin is in on the poisoning, which I like, or Littlefinger doing the poisoning and so forth. Mother Royan says, "Sorry to be late, but glad to have you here, Mother Royan."
Yeah.
The pigeon. I don't like this theory because Tyrion's already been through like most of the 77 courses, so the odds that he's even going to taste and even take a bite of some of these things is pretty low to me. But anyway.
Well, the pigeon pie is the I guess
the signature dishes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things I think everybody eats of, or it's the most important thing served at the wedding feast.
Could be. Coronel says, "Hi, Mother Royan. The pigeons were well and truly cooked in this pie, but he found them no more appetizing than the white ones fluttering about the hall. Sansa was not eating either. You're deathly pale, my lady," Tyrion said. "You need a breath of cool air, and I need a fresh doublet." Stood offered her his hand. Come. So we see right there, Tyrion literally doesn't eat the pie and has no intention of eating any of the pie, not even a single bite. So that's why I say that this doesn't seem like a very effective delivery mechanism.
Well, the chalice being dumped over his head and the clothing being, just soaking wet.
He's got reasons that he's behaving differently than normal. I get that.
Right. If the chalice had not have been dumped, there is a possibility that Tyrion would have at least taken a bite of the pie.
He and Sansa definitely don't feel any obligation to take a bite of this. Is my point.
Yeah.
I've tasted pigeon before. And going to Comic-Con in San Diego or Chicago. It's like the wedding cakes at spot. But again, like I said, neither one of them feels any obligation to taste them.
But yeah, I'm not going to this con. Too far.
Well, my mother line. The next con on my calendar is Ice and Fire Con. Before they could make their retreat, Joffrey was. Did I already said? Yeah, I said that. Yeah. But before they could make their retreat, Joffrey was back. "Uncle, where are you going? You're my cupbearer, remember?" "I need to change into fresh garb, Your Grace. May I have your leave?" "No, I like to look at you this way. Serve me my wine." King's chalice was on the table where he'd left it. Tyrion had to climb back onto his chair to reach it. Joff yanked it from his hands and drank long and deep, and started working as the wine ran purple down his chin. "My lord," Marjorie said, "we should return to our places. Lord Buckler wants to toast us." So the wine's purple now, but the problem is it seems to take too long to kill Joffrey, in some people's opinion at least. "My uncle hasn't eaten his pigeon pie." Boy, the child's one.
The reasoning for it not working as quickly as it did on Maester Wesson or whatever his name is the amount of wine.
Sure. This was diluted more. That's possible.
Yeah.
"My uncle hasn't eaten his pigeon pie." Holding the chalice one-handed, Joff jammed his other into Tyrion's pie. It's ill luck. So this actually does support the theory, right? It's ill luck not to eat the pie. So that right there does fit the logic that the pie could be an effective delivery mechanism. He scolded as he filled his mouth with hot spiced pigeon. "See, it's good." Spitting out flakes of crust, he coughed and helped himself to another fistful. "Dry though, needs washing down." So my problem is even the pie, which he's almost immediately after his first sip of what would be the poison wine, he continues to talk after he's taken some of it. So it doesn't. Anyway, and they are pretty close to each other. Joff took a swallow of wine and coughed again more violently. So at this point, he's taken the wine twice and he's taken multiple bites of the pie. "I want to see," cough, You ride that? Cough, cough. Pig, Uncle. I want. His words broke up in a fit of coughing. Marjorie looked at him with concern. Your Grace, it's cough, the pie. That's cough, pie. So I mean, this is a lot, right? This is. I would argue that even the pie, it's pretty long afterwards before he's really to the point where he can't speak or breathe.
Yeah, but the thing that people point to the pie is the first cough comes after the bite of the pie.
Right. The worst thing is the cutting of the book. I've had quail and peacock, but never not tasted pigeon.
No,
I agree. The worst thing is the cutting of the book. It's a mini burning of Alexandria to me. It's cough the pie, cough, not cough pie. Joff took another drink, or tried to, but all the wine came spewing back out. Another spit of coffee doubled him over. His face was turning red. I cough. I can't cough, 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 cough. The chalice slipped from his hand, and dark red wine went running across the dais. So there's definitely lots of ambiguity as this color of this wine. This goes back and forth between
the dark red is the name of the wine, so it being described as dark red makes sense.
Right. So plus dark red could be purple. When you look at a dark red wine, it kind of does have a purple tint to it anyway. Yeah. And earlier, red torrent, right? Not a dark red or purple torrent. So then the question is this deliberate by George changing the color of the wine to indicate when it's poisoned, or is it all intended to be completely ambiguous? Most George stuff is.
Yeah, I want the confusion of this scene is what leads to so many different theories, and I think that's what George wanted.
Right. George actually likes mystery. He likes ambiguity. He wrote with Morning Mistfall, which is said is kind of like the Loch Ness monster being no longer interesting once you've got cell phone cameras everywhere. Anyway, Joffrey is eating a Popeye's biscuit. I cough the same way. Those are the driest biscuits in the world. I think we all agree on our hate towards the cutting. He's choking, Queen Marjorie gasped. Grandma moved her side. Help the poor boy, Queen of Thorns screeched in a voice 10 times her size. Dolts, will you all stand about gaping? Help your king! Sir Garland shoved Tyrion aside and began to pound Joffrey on the back. Sir Osmond Kettleblack ripped open the king's collar. A fearful, high, thin sound emerged from the boy's throat, the sound of a man trying to suck a river through a reed. Then it stopped, and that was more terrible still. Turn him over, Mace Tyrell bellowed at everyone and no one. Turn him over, shake him by his heels. A different voice was calling, Water! Give him some water! The High Septon began to pray loudly. Grand Maester Pycelle shouted for someone to help him back to his chambers to fetch his potions. Joffrey began to claw at his throat, his nails tearing bloody gouges in the flesh. Beneath the skin, the muscles stood out hard as stone. Prince Tommen was screaming and crying. So the nails tearing bloody gouges in the flesh is obviously red wedding symbolism, tying him to Catelyn. The muscles hard as stone could therefore be referring to Catelyn as Lady Stoneheart, but it's also a king turning to stone, which could refer to the Kings of Winter. Anyway. See Eldrick Stoneskin's video. He is going to die, Tyrion realized. He felt curiously calm, though pandemonium raged all about him. They were pounding Joff in the back again, but his face was only growing darker. Dogs were barking, children were wailing, men were shouting useless advice at each other. Half the wedding guests were on their feet, some shoving each other for better view, others rushing to the doors in their haste to get away. Sir Meryn pried the king's mouth open to jam a spoon down his throat. As he did, the boy's eyes met Tyrion's. He has Jaime's eyes. Well, he had never seen Jaime look so scared. The boy's only 13. Joffrey was making a dry clacking noise, trying to speak. His eyes bulged white with terror. He lifted a hand, reaching for his uncle, or pointing. Is he begging my forgiveness, or does he think I can save him? No, Cersei wailed. Father, help him! Someone help him! My son! My son! Tyrion found himself thinking of Robb Stark. My own wedding is looking much better in hindsight. He looked to see how Sansa was taking this. There was so much confusion in the hall that he could not find her. But his eyes fell on the wedding chalice, forgotten on the floor. He went and scooped it up. There was still a half-inch of deep purple wine in the bottom of it. Tyrion considered a moment, then poured it on the floor. Why? I mean, maybe Brant believed him, but otherwise I just don't understand this. Marjorie Tyrell was weeping in her grandmother's arms as the old lady said, Be brave, be brave. Most of the musicians had fled, but one last flutist in the gallery was blowing a dirge, which kind of reminds me of the Red Wedding and the idea of the musicians continuing to play, which could be a signal that Tywin is responsible or in on the know as he was with the Red Wedding. Anyway.
Yeah.
In the rear of the throne room, scuffling had broken out around the doors, and the guests were tripping on each other. Sir Adam's Goldcloaks moved in to restore order. Guests were rushing headlong out into the night, some weeping, some stumbling and retching, others white with fear. It occurred to Tyrion belatedly that it might be wise to leave himself. When he heard Cersei scream, he knew that it was over. I should leave, now. Instead, he waddled toward her. Grantham leaping, perhaps?
Possible.
His sister sat in a puddle of wine, cradling her son's body. Her gown was torn and stained, her face white as chalk. A thin black dog crept up beside her, sniffing at Joffrey's corpse. The boy is gone, Cersei, Tywin said. Put his gloved hand on his daughter's shoulder as one of his guardsmen shooed away the dog. Unhand him now. Let him go. She did not hear. Took 2 Kingsguard to pry loose her fingers. So King Joffrey Baratheon slide limp and lifeless to the floor. You notice that Joff never got that sharp lesson? The only person I feel. Did you notice that Joffrey never got the sharp lesson? Girl Nettle says the only person I feel bad for is Marjorie, the Black Widow. Someone get this girl a husband from Temu. Or, well, she's going to get a husband, so I guess it works out okay for her. The High Septon, where was I? The High Septon knelt beside him. Father above, judge our good King Joffrey justly, he intoned, beginning prayer for the dead. Marjorie Tyrell began to sob, and Tyrion heard her mother, Lady Allery, saying, choked pie. It was not to do with you. Choked, we all saw. It was not to do with you. Our characters are often wrong. He did not choke. Cersei's voice was sharp as Sir Ellen's sword. My son was poisoned. She looked at the white knights standing helplessly around her. Kingsguard, do your duty. My lady? Arrest my brother, she commanded him. He did this, the dwarf, him and his little wife. They killed my son, your king. Take them both.
Cersei is behind the poisoning.
I've heard people say that, yes.
Well, as quickly as she went to poisoning instead of something being caught in his throat.
That's certainly part of the theory, that she was maybe trying to poison Tyrion.
Yep.
Gotta go by, says deck of cards. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, take a good one. Yeah, as quickly as she says poisoning, yeah, my mind is leaning towards that she's behind the attempted poisoning of Tyrion.
I like how calm Tywin is and how he told us that the boy needed a sharp lesson, and he never really does deliver the lesson. And of course, it would be dangerous to deliver a sharp lesson to Joffrey as king. He may have come to the conclusion that delivering that sharp lesson would get him killed, and then in fact, hanging around with Joffrey by the time he reaches age would get him killed, and so he may have been in on the poisoning.
Yeah, like I told you before we started, I'm fine with there being 2 potential targets by separate people at this wedding.
Absolutely. And Girl Nettle says, yes, Cersei was my first suspect when I saw this. Eccentric Excrement says, yes, Pigeon, it's greasy like a duck.
It helps to get back out easier.
Storm 61, Sansa 5. She might never need to share a bed with Tyrion again. That was what she wanted, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Characters often wrong.
Well, I mean, if there is a poisoning at King's Landing at the wedding, regardless of who the target was, who would have been the first suspect if it was a Lannister or one of Lannister blood would have been the Red Viper of Dorne.
We did mention when Arya was squab that's actually a sort of like beef is cow and pork is pig, and squab is pigeon. So process I've had been pretty common in authentic Chinese restaurants, generally referred to as squab. Sorry for the delay, I was driving. Yeah, we mentioned that squab means the meat of a pigeon when it's beaten. When she said she was squab, she said that was her name, and they were laughing about how she was naming herself food. Right? Just we got hot pie and squab. Is everybody named after food?
Yeah.
Anyway,
we're at the hour and 4. You want to do the theories on this on Mondays since it's a shorter chapter?
Yep.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Nettles, thank you for joining us. I know you can't catch all of them. We appreciate it. Everybody else, we appreciate it. This is a really long and important chapter. The confusion at the end, the way it's written, I think it's done that way on purpose, but we'll talk about that on Monday. And as on every Friday, I wish everybody to have a safe and fun weekend. Take care. We will see y'all Monday, and y'all be good. Bye, Richard. Bye, y'all.